You're listening to Play Therapy Community Podcast, episode 66.
Welcome to Play Therapy Community Podcast, providing connection, information, and inspiration to child therapists all around the world. Here's your host, a licensed psychotherapist, a registered play therapist, and my mom, Jackie Flynn.
This episode is brought to you by Jackie Flynn Consulting. I provide consultation to EMDR therapists seeking support with challenging cases, desiring to hone their skills, or working towards certification. As a registered play therapist and an EMDR consultant in training, helping clinicians that work with children and adolescents is at the heart of my work. If you're already trained in EMDR therapy and you'd like some consultation support on how to use it best with kids, or specifically how to integrate it with play therapy techniques while still holding true to all 8 phases of EMDR with fidelity, go to my website, Jackie Flynn Consulting, to schedule an appointment. I have a free download of a body scan PDF that I use with my child clients when we target somatic sensations in the body. You can find that at JackieFlynnConsulting.com as well. Now back to our episode. Hi there. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Play Therapy Community Podcast. Well, I am really excited about today's episode because it's all about group therapy, and I love group therapy. I provide group therapy myself in my practice, and I just happen to know somebody who is rocking at group therapy and is amazing, and her name is Katie May. So, hey Katie, thanks for being on the show.
Hey Jackie, thanks so much for having me here. I'm really excited.
Oh, it's my honor. Tell our listeners all about you and what you do and who you are.
Yeah, so my name is Katie May. As you said, I am a licensed therapist and I work exclusively with teenagers, actually. I have a teen support center in Flourtown outside of Philadelphia where I run 4 full groups of teens, and I have a couple of associates who work with me and support teens both in individual and group therapy too.
So you primarily do group therapy?
I do a lot of groups. I do have individual clients that I see as well, but I love my groups, so I tend to do a lot of them because they energize me.
Mm-hmm. And I bet they love you too.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to do.
So I know groups are your passion, and it's the reason, how I knew you was through just you educating the community about, when I say community, I know we're fellow members of Selling the Couch, which is an amazing community for therapists that are private practitioners. But just kind of talk to us about group therapy and what are like some of the types of groups that you facilitate in your work.
Oh, I love to talk about this. Yeah, so I first off think that groups can save the world. I think they're amazing, and when people feel connected to each other, then they start to feel better understood, they feel less alone, and they start to heal in a way that individual therapy cannot, or it maybe is not enough sometimes. So a lot of the groups that I do are focused on this idea of connection and on helping the members of the groups understand that they're not the only one who's going through an experience, and they're not weird or bad or wrong or different for feeling the way that they do. One of my favorite groups that I run, I like to use different supplies and creative means in my groups. And so one of my favorite groups is about being non-judgmental. I work with teenagers, so of course they're judging themselves critically, they're fearing judgment from each other. So I love to run this group where I gather lots of different rocks of shapes and sizes before group begins. And then the group members come in, we talk about this idea of being self-critical, of judging yourself, of judging other people and the impact of that. And then I have them choose rocks that represent some of their judgments. So it could be a small rock, a big rock, a collection of them. And once they've chosen their rocks, I have them grab the Sharpies because teenagers love Sharpies.
Yes.
And I have them write on and decorate the rocks in ways that represent their judgments. And so this is a long process. So they take some time, they really reflect on what those judgments are, and then they decorate the rocks accordingly. Now, if it's a big judgment, it might be a big rock. If it's a smaller judgment, a smaller rock, and then they use colors and words to describe the judgment on the rock.
Okay, so I love this. That is amazing. You're like doing that. It sounds like just by the size of the rock, you're doing a SUD, like the subjective unit of distress. Like how big is what they're feeling? How big is this judgment? And giving it that level that goes far past where words can take it, and that tangible piece to where they don't have to say something that's uncomfortable. They can explore it in a way that is safe. That's
Exactly.
wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it really is like a concrete way of looking at our self-judgments. And I actually have them, sometimes I'll bring in a scale and we'll weigh all the rocks. We'll talk about the weight of their judgments and how they're weighing them down. And then I have them put the rocks in a bag. I give them all a bag, and we really, we spend some mindful moments holding the rocks and feeling the weight of
Wow.
those rocks. And that's always a powerful experience too, of like, oh my gosh, I have, 12 pounds of rocks right here. That's a lot of judgments that you're holding on to inside. How does that impact you? And we really process that.
Oh, that's incredible. Now, I'm so curious. What's the name of your group?
The name of my group, well, I have a couple different groups, and I'm kind of a fan of like clear versus clever. So I just call it's either my teen DBT skills group, it's my teen girls therapy group, my teen talk therapy group. So they really are, exactly what it is. It's just a teen group. And I tried when I first started in the field to have different names for them, but then I found parents kind of tripping over the names when they were trying to ask about them on the phone. And I thought, let me just make this simple so that people know what they're talking about and know what to ask for when we're talking.
Oh, that's so important, because I know it's so tempting to be clever, especially if you're as creative as you are. Because I'm thinking you could go wild with the whole rock metaphor. That's awesome.
Yeah. So then there's actually a third part of the rock activity is that we walk with our bags of rocks up to where I work. It's right outside my door. There's a bridge that's the entrance to a state park. So we walk with our rocks up to the bridge and talk about, what it's like to carry them. And then I let them throw their rocks off and yell.
Wow.
And, whatever they need to do, whether it's a quiet personal experience or whether they need to work together. And then at the end, we process what it was like to actually let go.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
It's my favorite group.
Wow. It's now my new favorite group too. That's awesome. How therapeutic and cathartic and expressive and everything is involved in that. Did you think of that yourself?
I think it was a compilation of, inspiration from different places, but putting all the pieces together and having it be one whole group activity was something that I designed.
Can you speak a little bit about the other groups that you run as well?
Yeah, so one of the groups that I find really fun and a lot of the teens say is their favorite group is when we do a compliment circle. So we talk about the idea of when you're feeling really down or when you're feeling sad, that sometimes it helps to take the focus off of you and offer kindness to somebody else, and it can boost your mood. And so I have, actually, it's like a blow up crown, and I also have a tiara. So I give them the option of whether they want to wear or hold it. And then each person gets a turn to receive compliments from the rest of the group members. So they'll hold the crown, and then everyone will go around and say, I like your style. I think you're really funny. I like how you can be real and honest in here. And they really, they make eye contact. The person who's receiving the compliments is challenged to just say thank you and not debate it and really hear it and accept it. And at the beginning of this group, I have them all rate their feelings from 0 to 10. How are you feeling today? 10 being the best you've ever felt, 0 being the worst you've ever felt. And every single time we do this group, everybody's mood bumps up at least 2 to 3 points by the end of the group.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I know this is true for everybody, but especially for teens, sometimes they have this feeling of I am different or I'm not good enough feeling. And when they get that acceptance or that just verbal expression from another human being that, especially a peer, it can be like such a deposit into their emotional bank account.
I would agree with that. I think it's something that's really beautiful about groups. And I say especially with teens because I work with teens, but I'm sure this could be true across the board, is that, they go to school, they wear this mask, they act a certain way because they think they have to, because they don't want to be judged or outcast. And then they come to group and they can take off that mask and they can be real. So I have kids that are, act out at school or put on a front at school or pretend that they're a certain person, but then they come to group and they can be this sensitive and open and vulnerable human being that really connects with other people in a deeper and more meaningful way. And that's an amazing experience.
Oh my goodness, yes. And it just that they get a chance to experience that in their lifetime, much less in such a rough period of their life. If they're coming to therapy, they are hungry for that healing. It seems like it could really provide that. And I know many times, not always, but adolescents can present with resistance and think, well, I don't want to come here. It feels like a punishment. But it sounds like that type of setting is really accepting and in a way that doesn't mimic a school type setting or I'm teaching you something.
Right. And even in my skills groups where I am teaching skills, they still take ownership of the group. It's very much their group. And while there is structure, because that's part of what they come for, they're invested in the process. It's interesting. I had all of my groups scheduled off for spring break next week just because they were off from school and I had assumed they would want a break. But when I gave them the option this week, next week we're scheduled off, and 6 out of the 8 of each of my groups was like, well, I still want to be here. So we're going to have groups next week.
Oh my goodness. That's wonderful. Boy, that's a real testament to how much value they're getting out of it.
And the connection that they have with each other, I think, is so important too.
Oh, I love that. Can you speak about your skills group a little bit?
Yeah, so I run several DBT skills groups, dialectical behavior therapy, where I go through the 4 modules of teaching them mindfulness, being aware of their emotions rather than letting their emotions control them, distress tolerance, which is when we practice hundreds of coping skills in each of the groups. And that whole module is when we rate our feelings at the beginning of each group, and then we engage in an activity to practice a coping skill, and then rate our feelings at the end, because I really want them to understand how some of these things work. I've worked in programs before where, and to no fault to them, but they give a worksheet. These are the coping skills that you can use, go use them in the world. But I wanted them to have the experience of actually trying them out and figuring out what works for them and assessing whether it's going to work for them. So we do a lot of practicing of coping skills in session.
Yeah, they get that experience, and then they're more likely to use it. It embeds itself into their brain as, okay, this is something that's available to me when I need it.
Right, exactly.
Wow, you sound like a fantastic therapist too.
Oh my gosh, thank you. I love what I do. I mean, I think it just comes from a place of passion and really, caring and wanting to do this. So it definitely works for me, and it works for the teens that I see.
Oh, that's great. Now, what are some of the pros to group therapy? And I know you mentioned many of them already.
Yeah, so I think there are a lot of pros. For me, the pros far outweigh the cons. I think that group helps clients feel understood and connected to a positive support system. So, as a therapist in individual session, I know I'll spend some time normalizing and validating, telling them it makes sense that you feel this way. Given what you're going through, this makes sense for you. But I think that when clients can hear that from their peers, when they can have someone else say, I went through something similar and I felt this way and this is how I handled it, or this is what I did, and they can connect to a similar experience, that it helps them feel less alone. And there's all of this science behind the social brain, and that when we're connected to a healthy support system, whether we're learning skills or, no matter what we're doing, when we have other people surrounding us that support us, they're happier and healthier overall. So just having that place to go each week where you can connect with other people in itself is a positive and healing experience.
Oh, yes. It feels secure. And what are some of the cons?
So there's a few cons to group work for sure. You're unable to do some of that deeper work within a group setting. So, for example, any kind of details of trauma couldn't really be processed within a group setting. There's also the challenge for me as the therapist to make sure everyone gets balanced time. Even if someone may be struggling more than others in the group 1 week, we still can't spend the whole group on that one person because that's individual therapy, not group therapy. So we need to make sure that everyone's getting their equal time to share and has a voice within the group. And there's also sometimes personalities don't mix. I have several group members that have complained about not liking other members of the group. And for me, it's an opportunity. We get to process, we get to talk about, one, that you don't have to be friends with everybody in group. You're here for a certain reason and to support each other, but also that it's okay to have certain feelings and to talk about them and to process why you might feel a certain way. It helps you to learn to be assertive, to express your feelings in a way that you may not have ever been able to in the real world. But it's definitely a challenge to make sure you get the right mix of personalities within a group to make it flow.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that it can be a pro and a con, because I think groups are like a microcosm of their world in many ways. So if they're experiencing that with other group members, perhaps that's what they're experiencing out in their daily life. And if they get a chance to work through that in the group in a nice, safe, supported way, then when they go out in their daily lives, it makes that part a little bit easier as well.
Absolutely. I would 100% agree. I actually had someone in my group last night who was angry with me, and I was so grateful for that experience that I think, in her regular life every day had been hurt a lot, but been very passive about it. And the fact that she brought to my attention that something that I said just triggered something in her that she wasn't happy with, and was able to say, I'm angry about that, was a healing experience, I think.
Yeah, and I love that we can hold that space for our clients to where it's okay to feel these feelings that come up. You're not going to be judged or shut down, and we're going to work with it, even if it's directed at me.
Right, exactly.
It is a pretty unique setting. Now, we have a lot of therapists listening and many parents, but specifically for the therapists that are working with children, adolescents, and families that are considering group therapy or maybe already providing group therapy. What are some tips that you have?
Some tips I have for
therapists, child therapists.
Okay.
And adolescents.
Yeah, the first thing I would say is to make sure you're taking enough time to build trust and build rapport within the group. So, coming into that first group, you don't want to dive deep into an issue when they're not even comfortable with each other yet. So if you think about it, my groups, I cap them at 8. So in that first group, you've gathered 8 people who don't know each other at all. It's a really vulnerable experience. They're scared of what they're going to have to say. They're scared of if they say something, they're going to be judged for it. So being able to put yourself in your group member's shoes and understand their experience coming into group is really important. And then making sure you're taking enough time for them to feel comfortable with each other, doing icebreakers, making sure that they're building trust with each other and that you're starting on something that's less intense and building your way up to those deeper issues so they have the time to actually feel comfortable processing. Otherwise, you're going to hear crickets in the room and people are going to shut down.
Yes, that trust. It sounds like that's the key. That's the big thread that makes it all work.
Yeah.
Now, I know you have some resources, and we have a free download that you provided for our listeners, and you can find that at playtherapycommunity.com. Episode 59 is where this episode is located, and you can find that in the show notes. But what are some of the resources? I know you have social media, and just kind of tell us about what you have to offer for our listeners.
Absolutely. So I love helping other therapists who are looking to market and fill and grow groups within their practice. So I actually created a group marketing course and a group management and activities course. The group management course is a 6 continuing education credit course, and the group marketing course is a full-on support system and all-access guide to marketing and filling groups. And you can find both of them at becomeagroupguru.com.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I know I've watched your videos online. You have so much energy, and I mean, very much like what we're hearing now, just that passion, but it's not just passion. It's like really good knowledge and all kinds of good stuff that people can just take and implement right away. It's not like real tough, confusing, jargon-filled stuff.
Right. Thank you. I love to break things down into smaller steps. And really my goal is to help other therapists get their groups up and running because again, groups are so valuable to our communities. So I want everyone to be able to experience something so powerful.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Katie.
Thank you, Jackie. I loved being here.
All right. I'll catch you later.
All right.
Bye-bye.
To join our growing community for free, just go to playtherapycommunity.com and find us on Facebook too.
Thanks for listening to the Play Therapy Community Podcast. Until next time, bye-bye.